I call Chris Farfoy.
Thank you very much, Mr Chair. It's always a pleasure to go after Paul Foster-Bell, who I'm sure the technicians are very thankful for him saving them some time and doing the annual check on the speaker system here in Parliament, Mr Chair. Mr Chair, there have been a number of alternative titles put up for this bill, and I would like to again go for a simple alternative, and that we should change the name of this bill to the Environmental Responsibility Reporting Bill. And as a big fan of acronyms for bills, Mr Chair, that would change this bill to the ERR or mistake, because that is exactly what this piece of legislation is. This government has erred in this piece of legislation. It has taken away a large degree of independence in the reporting that needs to go on here in New Zealand and further, and I'll come to that soon, Mr Chair, that we need to make sure that our current state of affairs with our monitoring of our environment is independent, and we are looking at the things that need to be looked at. And this government has erred in that, because in this piece of legislation it is giving some of that responsibility, Mr Chair, to the Minister. And that leaves that process open to political interference where, Mr Chair, things that should be looked at might not get looked at. And in my opinion, and in the opinion of this party and in the opposition, Mr Chair, the government has erred with the ERR, as I would like to see it changed. Mr Chair, there needs to be independence when we are dealing with the reporting and the monitoring of the environment. And another instance where, Mr Chair, where this piece of legislation has erred is that the fact that the government did not take up the opportunity to support Supplementary Order Paper 92, which was in the name of my colleague Sua Williams-Seo. That would have inserted, Mr Chair, a clause within the piece of legislation to include a consideration for New Zealand's economic and environmental activities and how they impact on the Pacific region's climate and ecosystems and its people. That is a huge error, Mr Chair. I don't see anything hugely controversial about that, but we don't live in isolation at the bottom of the Pacific. What we do, Mr Chair, here in New Zealand, what the Australians do in Australia, affects all those small nations in the Pacific. The likes of Tokelau, which my parents came from, with only 1,500 people living on those three atolls, Mr Chair, very much rely on what the activities of other nations and their future. I think the highest point above sea level is something like 50 to 75 centimetres above sea level. So I think we do have, Mr Chair, a responsibility to those Pacific nations to make sure that we include them in the monitoring of how what we do affects them. And I think especially with some of those that we do have an official relationship with, we should be doing more to make sure that we are monitoring what is happening to us and is what is happening to them. And Mr Chair, that is an error or an on behalf of this piece of legislation.
Sorry to interrupt the honourable member. The time has come for me to leave the chair for the dinner break. This debate is interrupted, and I shall resume the chair at 7:30.